There's a quote I had underlined about how your work at the very most will meet 80% of your needs. And the other 20%, you have to find on your own outside of that, whether it's a hobby or like volunteer work or community involvement. So if the majority of your work meets the things that make you feel engaged. But essentially it was the concept of like, you can fill the rest of your cup outside of work.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Path Found, the podcast about the real, messy, unexpected journeys that lead us to the work we love. I'm Monica Argandonia, and every week I talk with someone whose story proves there's no single right way to build a meaningful life. Today on Path Found, you're going to meet someone whose journey embodies reinvention, honesty, and the courage to choose the life you actually want, not the one you think you're supposed to want. Kayla Anderson has worn more hats than most people do in a lifetime. Aspiring trauma surgeon, aerospace hopeful, Twitch climate educator, environmental justice communicator, nonprofit marketer, and now the founder and CEO of Riparian Media, a social media and production company rooted in creativity, values, and community. But what makes Kayla's story powerful isn't the path she took. It's the constant thread of curiosity, self-reflection, and learning to believe that she deserves good things out of life. Today, she talks about navigating burnout, the realities of entrepreneurship, rebuilding community from scratch, and the moment everything shifted for her. This is a conversation about curiosity, confidence, boundaries, and building a life that truly fits. So, Kayla, thank you so much for agreeing to do this today, and I'm really excited to talk with you. A former student, you have been super successful, and it's really amazing to see all the different things that you've done and just put yourself out there. So I'd like you to share that story today. But first, we're going to go back, because I always go back. When you were in high school, when you were thinking about what you were going to do, did you have an idea? Like, what was in your head? What kind of student or kid were you?
That's a great question. So when I was in high school, I initially, specifically in my junior year of high school, my first initial idea was that I wanted to be a trauma surgeon and work in the ER. Yeah. So I was in honors anatomy and I had to dissect a cat. That was an experience. The whole classroom smelled like formaldehyde the whole semester. So I'm pretty sure there were like some brain cells getting cooked from being in the classroom like that the whole time. We got to go to a cadaver lab, all those really cool things, and learned a lot about the body. But the more research I was doing into that, I learned, because I specifically wanted to be a trauma surgeon in the ER to help suicide attempt victims. Because growing up in Southern California, and there's a lot that goes on with like the pressure of growing up in like a wealthy area and how that impacts a lot of kids. And so I already had like a friend or two that had already killed themselves at that point. So there was just that kind of feeling of like, how am I able to make a difference in that way? But when I was doing more research into it, becoming a trauma surgeon is a very, very long time period in school. It costs a lot of money. And you also don't get to decide really who's on your table. So there was this whole back and forth of, if I do this, the type of life I'm going to live is very traumatic and very expensive. And yeah, I'm still going to be doing good things, but it's probably going to be people that had to be like jaws of life or, shot.
Right.
And things like that. And when I was like really kind of chewing on that, I realized that with how much of an empathetic person I am, it would probably crush me. So they had like a noble thought. And then I'm like, realized it's probably not going to be the best way to go. So once I was in my senior year of high school and I was noodling back and forth about things, I was really chewing on what was I really into as a kid. And that was astronomy and space. And I remember in third grade, we had a whole space party where they brought in giant telescopes all throughout the elementary school. And my dad took me to this event and you got to like look at the telescopes and see all the stars. And it was really fascinating. And so when I was kind of going through the thinky thoughts of what actually intrigued me as a little kid, I was like, space. What can I do with space? So I started all the research on what you can do with space, and I settled on aerospace engineering and was like, all right, if I do aerospace engineering, maybe I can become a botanist on the space station. And this was totally inspired by The Martian, but I did not want to be stranded on Mars growing potatoes. But the idea of getting to grow plants in space was just lit me up. I was like, this would be so much fun. I would love to do this. And so I started studying that when I went to community college. You have to do your generals and everything. But I went and got my scuba certification because in order to do astronaut training, you need to be scuba certified because the way they train you is you're in your full-on suit and you're just in a pool of water because that's the closest thing we can get to simulating movement when you're in space. So I'm scuba certified. I was going up to the Griffith Observatory every month for all the space talks to network and get connected with people. I started talking to people that worked at SpaceX at the time and was like, what's it like working there? And what do you do? What's your path in?
How did you know to do that? Like, you were a senior in high school. Seniors in high school usually don't think about, hey, what connections can I make? And like, how did you know to do that?
That's a great question. Actually, I don't know. Like, I had to figure out a lot of things on my own. Like, if we were to kind of get into my personal history, I have like a telenovela of my life, essentially. My parents divorced the summer before I started high school. There's a lot of things that went on with that. Eventually, I ended up living with my dad and my grandmother, and my mom moved back out of state with my younger sister. And there was just a lot of this feeling of I need to look out for myself. And if I'm going to go anywhere, I have to make that happen. And thankfully, growing up in Orange County, California, like, I definitely was very privileged to even just be in San Clemente and being around like a mentality of you are able to do whatever you set your mind to. And that's the one thing that I do have to give a lot of credit to my parents for, is that both my mom and my dad were like, if you study and build like your skills, you're going to be fine and you can do whatever it is that you set your mind to. And my mom was very entrepreneurial. She did a lot of stuff. Like, she had her own soap company and like web design and was a CMO at one point. She managed like 30, like was a regional manager for like 30 plus hair salons. So the family that I am from is like driven entrepreneurial spirit. So I think just from growing up around that, it just kind of like learning through osmosis in a little bit of ways. But also I'm a very avid reader. And so in high school, whereas I really loved reading fantasy, I also I was a total library kid. It was one of those, like, I'm just like the loner, I'm in marching band, I'm going to go to the library and read books because people are lame and kind of like antisocial in that way. Since I decided I'm not really sure if I want to do the trauma surgeon path, I was like, I'm just going to ask people like why they do what they do. Because I don't know, like, why did they do what they do?
Yeah.
And try to figure it out. And then by the time, so getting into community college. So community college is when I really started the networking part of it. High school was just I don't know, like, people are asking me what I want to do. I'll figure it out, I guess. And then once I went to community college, I went to Saddleback College. Then it was really getting into, well, I think I want to do aerospace, so we're going to go that route. And then trying to put the puzzle pieces together of, if I want to do this, what needs to happen? And from a lot of internet research, the biggest thing, apparently a lot of members of, I think it was the Air Force, go in, and I was like, I don't want to enlist. I am not doing that. So the next best thing was aerospace engineering degree. And then it is who you know. So from doing a lot of research on the internet, I went from there and was like, all right, it's who you know for a lot of things. So I guess I'm going to start trying to know people. I mean, it was a treat driving up to Griffith every month anyway. And then when you're in the same room with people that also have the same special interest as you, everyone's just excited and talking about it. So it wasn't like a really difficult bridge to like cross.
Mm-hmm.
It was just, oh, we're here talking about space stuff. I'm like, whoa, like, you like space stuff and I like space stuff. That's amazing. What are you doing with your space stuff? And I'm like, I don't know. I want to go and do this. I'm like, whoa, that's really cool. I'm currently building a literal rocket. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. Tell me about that. So making those kinds of like networks and or just connections wasn't like, I wasn't going out of my way to find a specific person, if that makes sense. It was more so I was just there in a room full of excited people, and I was also really excited. So we got to just talk about the thing we were excited about. By the time it came for me to transfer to Cal State Long Beach, though, there's a lot going on in my personal life. Like, my grandma's health was starting to fail, and there's no way I was able to keep up with essentially full-time work. I was working in restaurants at this point, and engineering credits are insane. Like, one class is like 5 credits. So full-time school, nearly full-time work, living with my dad and my grandmother, who's now needing more care. And something had to give. I mean, I was just having panic attacks, like, just full stop. I was just having a really bad time. So something had to give. Decided aero was not going to be the way to go. But I had a crap ton of STEM credits at this point, and also a lot of the humanities, because I found humanities also really interesting. And so when I transferred to Long Beach, I initially transferred with my East Asian Studies. And so that was my major. And because I had so many humanities credits. And then when I transferred, they're like, you can also pick a minor. And I'm like, great, what am I qualified for? And they said environmental science and policy. So I'm like, that's perfect. I've already done chemistry. I've already done this. I have math, and we have all my humanities. I wanted to learn Japanese at the time because the guy I was dating, and I wanted to be able to speak to his family because his mom could speak English, but it was a bit easier to have the Japanese language skills in order to convey like abstract topics that you can't really convey in English versus Japanese. So I was doing both, doing East Asian studies and then environmental science. And from there, that came together in my senior thesis, which was how Japan's traditional religions impact their modern day environmental policy, which won the Best Paper in Asian Studies award, which is really cool.
But I think it's really interesting that nobody necessarily would pair East Asian studies with environmental science and policy. I always tell students, just pick up a minor, pick up something else you like, take classes in things that you might be interested in, because you never know when they do connect. So I think it's great. And your topic was great and really reflects that. So you went from trauma surgeon to a botanist on some planet to East Asian studies and environmental science and policy. So the why and the curiosity is really reflected there. You graduate, and in your head, what did you think? I'm going to graduate, and then what I'm going to do?
Well, I graduated at the start of the pandemic. I mean, as you might remember, I'd asked for a letter of recommendation for you for the Natural Resources Defense Council for their summer internship. And initially, I was thinking I was going to be really leading into the environmental science and policy path of it. But unfortunately, with graduating May of 2020, I got the email that they were saying the internship was canceled due to the pandemic, due to lockdowns. And once I got that, I was just sitting there like, what am I even going to do? There's no opportunity at this point in this field. I could maybe go tag desert tortoises in Joshua Tree, but there wasn't even some of the outdoor jobs. It seemed they weren't hiring. There seemed to have been like a hiring freeze. But while all this is going on, I actually was a Twitch live streamer. I started in 2018. I was playing League of Legends and grew an audience. And when I took the environmental justice course my junior year of college, that blew my mind. And I was like, because there was a lot of concepts I already knew about just by growing up next to the beach, but really getting into the nitty gritty things of where you're born, how your zip code can impact your health, just had me really feeling like this is so unjust and this is really pissing me off. And why, it doesn't have to be this way. And so I realized, since I had a sizable audience on the internet, I was thinking, why not? This is more important than League of Legends. I'm just going to start talking about everything I'm learning in my college classes and play video games, and maybe my audience will like it. Thankfully, they did. And so while I was live streaming and having conversations about this is what I'm learning today, it quickly evolved into me becoming, at that time, the only environmental and climate content creator on Twitch. And I was starting to join debate panels and hanging out with other politics Twitch streamers. And then a startup found my live stream and offered me a job my senior year of college, but I was in my second to last semester. So they had emailed me and they were like, hey, we found you on Twitch. We're building a platform. We would love to pay you to do what you're doing. And I was like, that sounds amazing. Can you follow up with me after I graduate? Because there's no way. I cannot work right now. And so I completely forgot about it until they actually followed up with me in May of 2020. And they were saying, hey, we would still love to offer you this job. And it's fully remote, especially because of the pandemic. Do you want it? And I got that email about a week after I got the email from the NRDC saying that the internship was canceled. So I just jumped onto that and was like, yes, absolutely. I will take any job right now, because otherwise I'm just going to be stuck at home and I don't really know what I'm going to be able to do. So I got really, really lucky on that just from being in the right place at the right time. And with that, so I worked remotely for a startup for 10 months. Burnt out. It was a lot. It was a really good idea. Essentially, they were creating a platform where I interviewed over 70 people in like the climate space, whether they were professors or journalists or authors. And I was responsible from start to finish of getting the episodes ready to go, being the host, managing all the scene transitions and all that. So it was a whole lot. I was a single person production studio for my channel, essentially, which being a Twitch streamer, that's just what you learn to do. But doing that in the capacity that I was doing it, it just was really frying me out. So moved up to Vancouver, and then I got applied for a job at the Columbia River Economic Development Council to be their in-house events and marketing manager. And so my first 3 months here, I was still working for the startup and was like, I can't keep doing this. I'm exhausted. I'm really not getting compensated for the amount of work that I'm putting in. And there was a lot of that, oh, well, we'll get you a raise once we get our Series A funding. And I was just there like, you haven't even gotten your first seed round? Like, you can't make these promises. You don't even know if you're going to have access to this money, because it was just self-funded. And then they were getting some sponsorships. When I was thinking about where I wanted, or just how I wanted to feel about work, I realized I did not want to feel this tired and this anxious and this stressed and feeling like I was just on all the time, even when I wasn't working. So applied for this in-house job thinking that maybe 9 to 5 is the way I should be going. Got the job. So I was able to quit the startup role. And then it was really nice getting paid a like semi-living wage, because it was the Columbia River Economic Development Council is a nonprofit. So I was making good money for that position.
And what are you doing for them?
So I was doing their event planning and social media. So I had to really finagle my resume to be like, how do I like actually apply to this? Because I have the skill set of video production and social media from all my influencer work and my time at the startup. And then event planning, I'm like, well, I kind of, every live episode that I did was essentially event planning, because I was talking with the guest and getting time sorted out and all these things. So, I mean, it's not the same, but let's not planned a wedding before. So I know how to do that. So I was like, thankfully, the woman that hired me thought I was really cool, liked my personality. So I was in-house doing event planning and social media marketing, writing newsletters, LinkedIn posts, website updates, and then planning things like annual investor events and luncheons, like really big luncheon things where they are bringing in like, oh, we're going to talk about the semiconductor industry and how this is impacting the region currently. So doing all that type of planning. So yeah, graduated May of 2020, worked for the startup, moved up here February of 2021, started 9 to 5 work May of 2021, was there for a year and a half. And once there was the return to office, it was only 2 days a week, but I realized that since I started my career, after graduating college, like we should be taking proper breaks. We should, I don't know, be allowed to go for a walk during the day. If I'm having writer's block, why can't I go for like a hike in the middle of the day? Because I'm still working. I'm still thinking about the thing, but there's no way I can be creative behind a desk. Like this is just not working. Or the biggest thing was if I'm really good at my job and I finish all my tasks in like 3 hours, why do I have to pretend to be busy for the other 5? Why can't I go home? So I had a lot of questions or things like, what's the point of the board? So my work bestie, he was also a workplace menace. And so we actually started, when I came back from Sweden, I was like, hey, bestie, listen, they do fika. We should do that. Let's do it. And so initially we started putting it on our work calendar. So like, hey, we're doing fika every Thursday.
Explain fika.
Fika is just like coffee break where you're not supposed to be working. So it's a Swedish concept. And it's like, yeah, you go hang out with your coworkers and you go down to like the cafe and you get your coffee and you hang out, you vibe for a little bit. So it's literally just, it's a pastry break, but it's like a cultural pastry break. So we started putting on the calendar and then we got questions and they were like, what is this? Like, why are you guys like leaving every Thursday? It's like, because we're taking a break, which we're legally allowed to do. And so we got a lot of looks, and initially it was just him and I, but then eventually we got like almost half the floor to do fika every Thursday. So it was great. And eventually our bosses joined us too. So like it was like, okay, cool. Like we're all doing fika. But then he quit after a bit because he had worked in his role for about 4 years and he was really tired. And when your work bestie leaves, it changes the whole dynamic of things. So I decided to leave as well. I still wanted to do climate comms, but I didn't want to be on all the time, which is what's required of you when you're live streaming. So I completely burnt out from live streaming. Honestly, I still am. And it's been 4 years. And the idea of booting up a Twitch live stream again just makes me have like a visceral reaction of like, I can't do it. It was so exhausting. But TikTok videos, you're only on for the duration that you're filming, and I can script it out. And so I did this whole series breaking down all of Project Drawdown's climate solutions and putting it into like 30 to 60-second chunks, putting it in layman's terms like, hey, like we could do this and it would cost this, and that's a cool climate solution. Grew my TikTok audience from that. I got put on Harvard Sea Change's inaugural climate creators to watch list because of that work. So I got that Harvard street cred, which is really cool.
So when you quit the nonprofit, though, did you have a job lined up?
I started my own company.
So you did the nonprofit, you quit, you went into the TikTok videos, or was this overlapping?
Oh, so TikTok was overlapping a little bit with the startup. Yeah, so TikTok overlapped with both the startup and the nonprofit.
Okay, so you were building that.
Yeah, I was building that up. So I stopped making TikTok videos. I'm just doing the nonprofit events and marketing managing work. And one of the board members actually was like, hey, I really like what you're doing. Are you open to doing some freelance stuff on the side? And this started in early 2022. And I was here like, I'm not going to say no to more money. So what do you want me to do? So I got my first freelancing client helping produce explanation YouTube videos for a cybersecurity company and making those videos engaging. So it was quite fun. The team was great to work with. And then I got 2 more clients down the line. And once I got that third client in October of 2022, I realized that the freelance work was just about replacing my salary, the nonprofit. And after a lot of thinking, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to start my own company. I think I could do this. I've been creating content since 2018. I obviously know what I'm doing, or at least I hope I know what I'm doing, because there's a lot of self-doubt in all this. And I think this is the bane of any creative's existence, where you always think that what you're making is just atrocious and bad and you don't know what you're doing. But then other people are like, no, like, it's good. What do you mean? We really like it. We wouldn't be working with you if we thought otherwise. So I put in my 2 weeks notice. I was very polite. It's like, I like you guys. Here's my 2 weeks notice. I'm going to be doing this. And so I started my own company on November 1st of 2022, called it Riparian Media. And I've now entered my 4th year of business. And what we do is social media strategy, management, content creation. And it's also expanded from that now because it started with that. But now I'm also working on a 12-part documentary series for our local farmers market. And I've always kind of had this idea in the back of my mind that it'd be really cool to do something like Earthrise Studios. They're based in the UK and they do climate documentaries. And so this is where I was thinking of, oh, maybe I can grow Riparian to the point where the social media arm is paying for the climate documentary arm. And then that's how I get back into climate comms. And this was in my like 5-10-year plan. No, 3rd-year business, I'm already doing documentaries. And this is for our farmers market, talking about what it is to be like a local farmer and educating people on what that is like. So that way they also want to come and buy from the farmers market. So my 5-year plan just went out the window or was sped up. And I'm doing that in my 3rd-year business. And now I have a team of 7, including myself. And we do social media from anywhere from iPhone footage all the way up to cinematic video production. We have drone operators and professional photographers, like including myself. And it's just, because I'm insane and I just do everything. And I think that's just my content creator background. You have to learn to do everything on your own when you're doing influencer work.
So you're 25, 26 years old starting this company. Did you even know how to start a company, business? Did you?
Not at all. I started reading books. So this all goes back to me being an avid bookworm. So my kind of like pseudo mentor, who offered me the first freelancing gig job, we were meeting up every month because he's a client, but also he had run his own marketing agencies before. And so I was like, hey, can I talk to you about this? Like, what are you doing? And so I was able to ask questions. And he also really helped me out. Like, he got me the Vancouver Farmers Market as a client because he knew the CEO of the market. And so he was able to facilitate a meeting. Like, Alan is just such a phenomenal person. And it's really thanks to him that I even felt the confidence to start my own company, because he, approached me with that initial offer for the cybersecurity organization. And then he's like, oh, well, farmers market, this. And being able to talk to someone who already, like, he built 2 agencies, well, one from the ground up, and then moved into another one and built that up. Oh no, 3. And yeah, gone in and helped like course correct them and move them up. Did the same for another one. And now he's working at Later, which is, it started off as an Instagram scheduling tool. And now they've just exploded and they do much more than that, like influencer relations and everything. So he's way up there in that. Super amazing person. But his calendar is so busy now, it's like nigh impossible to meet up with him. But being able to talk with him like within the first year of business was so helpful. And getting advice on, hey, like, how do I even quote? Like, how do I estimate that? And how do I, like, how would you recommend I talk to these clients or position myself as an authority figure? And especially because in the early, the first year of business I still have this now, it's just not to like the near extreme, but a lot of imposter syndrome and a lot of, I have no idea what I'm doing. I literally did not go to school for business. I went to school for East Asian studies and environmental science. There is nothing in any of these courses about how to start a company, how to run a company, how to manage a team, how to delegate. But at the same time, I think the fact that I don't have a traditional business degree is the reason why I'm successful, especially in this current weird work environment. Because a lot of the ways that I talk about my business, or I mean, one of the, I think, low-hanging fruit examples, especially with my influencer background, was you have to create like a recognizable image. And like everyone in marketing knows, like you have to have something for people to lock onto. But instead of being like, oh, like we're locking on to like Riparian Media itself, I'm like, no, we're locking on to the fact that our mascot is an eel. We're making eels cute. And so all of like, I just started company merch this year officially. And so like our notebooks, it's like, it's a river. But if you look closely, the river is an eel and it's the riparian zone. And like creating things that like for me as a general consumer would actually want to use. Like honestly, like in this first print, I think the logo is a bit big on this and I might move it to the side instead next time. Cause I'm like, I don't even want this to feel like it's company branded merchandise. I just want this to evoke a feeling of like, that's so beautiful and eels are really fucking cute. And I want to do this now. So it's been really intriguing over the past 3 years of being like, yeah, like things are eely cute or that's eely good or a lot of eel puns whenever I talk about the company online, or we have a shirt that is an eel, but it says engage responsibly. And it can be read two ways. It's engage responsibly with the environment, but also engage responsibly online when you're scrolling. Mm-hmm. Or we have the recycle icon, but it says reduce, reuse, repost. So like these little environmental puns in there. So taking a very different path of building a company where I was like, I'm just an influencer on a side quest. And that side quest is building a company. Because when you're a content creator, if you watch YouTube videos about like being a content creator, there's all this stuff about there like you need to have 7 streams of income and there's your YouTube channel and your Twitch channel and you're this. And I'm like, well, if I'm taking a break from Twitch and TikTok right now and I'm building a company, but I'm still treating it not, and I don't know how to really describe the thought process because it's very, very abstract, but it's this feeling of I'm going to have this forever. Like I'm not building it from this perspective. I'm going to grow it and then exit. Like it's not from a startup mentality. It's I want this to be a lifestyle business. I want whoever works for me to have this be their lifestyle business. I want everyone to have a living wage. I'm basically trying to build a Swedish company in America, which is very hard, by the way. And also conveying that to clients where it's like, hey, I'm building the company up to the point where we're going to have a 4-day work week. So I have to figure out how to navigate that, especially since we have weekend clients. So thinking about what's it called, kind of like overlapping schedules where like weekend people overlap like one day with the during the week people or something. But I can only think about all these things because I read so many books. I have literally spent over $1,000 this year alone on business books at our local independent bookstore, or even listening to podcasts like Financial Feminist with Tori Dunlap. That's how I learned about Amanda Littman, who's the founder of Run for Something. And she also recently published a book this year called When We're in Charge. And before I started bringing, because this year is when the company has just exploded in terms of contractors and the type of work. And I'm like, I need to learn how to delegate. Where do I even learn how to delegate? There's no information about this. And then one day I'm listening to Tori's podcast. She's interviewing Amanda Littman, and Amanda Littman said something about delegation, and now she has a book. I immediately placed that order, went to my local bookstore, and I just devoured it in like 2 days. And literally every other page is like tabbed and highlighted. And so taking all those things and applying it into my day-to-day to try to be a good leader and give people.
So 2 things. One, I think it's fantastic that you couldn't really find the right fit work-wise. You knew what you didn't like. You knew aspects of things that you didn't like. Clearly, you would prefer to be the boss and not work for a boss. And you went and did it. You're like, nope, this isn't it. This isn't it. This isn't it. It's not out there what I want, so I'm going to create it. I think kudos to you for that. And that took a lot, right? You put yourself out there. The other thing, though, I think is interesting is that, and I've had a couple interviews now where people have mentioned this. So we hear a lot about follow your passion. I've said that, a lot about, love what you do. But some of the other people I've been talking to have taken that, one more step and said, yeah, but find what you're good at. And then, whether you become passionate because you're good at it and it just comes easy, or willing to work at it and get better at it, or, maybe that's why you're good at it is because you had a passion for it. Either way, you found something you're really good at and you made that work. And so again, congratulations to you, because you're 29 years old. You really have taken your 20s and said, no, I want to make this work for me. And you found something, and I'm sure I'm going to see a documentary from you here very soon and more to come. I had total confidence that that's going to happen for you. So yeah, that is amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, no, and I hope so. I have a lot of ideas, and I just we have a whiteboard. We took this like empty hallway and we got like one of those whiteboards that had the sticky backs. And I have a lot of like ideas listed of like, oh, I could do this or I could do that. But I really, kind of on the point of finding what you're good at, I think really is what the relevant work advice for the work environments now. Because following your passion can be fickle. Even looking at my own thing of like, oh, maybe I want to do trauma surgeon, or maybe I'll do space, or maybe I want to do this. Like if I were to follow my current passion, I would be van lifing and essentially being a hermit, because I spend so much time online due to the nature of my job. I'd be like, man, I'm consuming so many tiny house videos. Like I want to go, I'll move to New Zealand. I'll build a tiny home and be barefoot with the Kiwis and I don't know, go surf every day. But would that make me happy? I don't think it would. And I know that might sound a bit counterintuitive of like, oh, but if something you're passionate about, will you be happy pursuing it? And I don't think the answer is yes. Like if you look at people that become, like say they want to be musicians, right? But then actually aren't really thrilled about how much work it takes to go and be in the symphony. Like you might be really passionate about music, but you might not be passionate about the fact that you have to literally practice until your fingers start feeling like they're going to fall off. Instead, if you think really about like what is it that you love about music, it could be that you enjoy listening to it, or you enjoy really actually seeing the symphony, or you enjoy thinking about theory. And then that can open up different paths than what you initially thought you might want to be doing. Or even people saying that, I know that there's a new trend of a lot of young folks saying they want to become influencers. And like, oh, I want to become an influencer, I want to do this. And when I think about it, I'm like, I don't think they understand what actually goes into that work. Like it's new, it's shiny. You can make a lot of money. Like absolutely. I completely understand the idea of like, wow, I want to be the next Mr. Beast. But then if you want to be the next Mr. Beast, you should listen to the interview he did with Colin and Samir, where he talks about how many hours he actually works. But he found a thing he's good at that he's also passionate about, and thankfully it worked out for him. That man is working well over 70 hours a week, and he rarely goes out because he gets recognized now. And so he just works. And if you think about what is actually fulfilling in life. And this is something I have been really wrestling with a lot recently, actually, because when I've gotten the question, well, now that I'm, 29 going on 30, I'm thinking about setting myself up for retirement. What am I going to be doing when I'm 62, 63? And when I really think about it, I'm like, honestly, if money wasn't a problem, I would still be doing what I'm doing because it fills most of my needs. Like, it's a creative outlet. I get to help raise the voices of small businesses and nonprofits and community organizations. I am constantly learning. I get to devour so many books, so that tickles my brain. And the people that I get to engage with are very interesting and dynamic people. And the friends that I've made, because like my friend network is also a bunch of just entrepreneurial badass women. And on that note, actually, the people you surround yourself with really makes a huge difference. And it took me a while to realize that, honestly, when I think about friendships in the past or even people I chose to date and how it makes a really huge difference to one, be dating someone who is just like, you go girl, crush it. Like, I got you. Let me know what you need. Being able to have like really deep critical conversations about like, hey, what if I do this direction of my business and it fails? Like, well, how are we going to navigate this together? And even if you were having like a really rough day, because like there's a lot of rough days in business and a lot of self-doubt still. Like, it's not a perfect role, but the majority of the days are good. And ultimately, actually, there was a concept in Amanda's book, When We're in Charge. There's a quote I had underlined about how your work at the very most, will meet 80% of your needs. And the other 20%, you have to find on your own outside of that, whether it's a hobby or like volunteer work or community involvement. And an example that she pulled was she had interviewed someone who was working in the climate space, I think in New York. And she realized that the actual work she was doing was not fulfilling her because she wanted to be doing more like hands-on things and she was doing more like paperwork. So the job was meeting 80% of her needs. Like, she had a good wage, she was in a field that mattered to her, and she was making an impact, but she was feeling that like, why, like, majority of the days were good, but there was still that feeling of something is missing. So she was like, well, how can I feel like this other part of this? Because I don't like necessarily want to be quitting my job. But essentially it was the concept of like, you can fill the rest of your cup outside of work. So if the majority of your work meets the things that make you feel engaged and curious, or maybe your need in work might not actually be curiosity, because everyone's needs are different.
All right. So to wrap it up here, I think you have already given, some amazing life lessons and advice. But if there's one thing that you could go back and tell yourself while you were in college, knowing what you know now, what would it be?
I think it would be the idea that I do deserve good things out of life. And that's probably a very unconventional answer. But no, I'm not going to get into like my upbringing and like past poor decision making and all that stuff. But I genuinely held the belief for a really long time. It was a really low time too, where I was like very depressed and not in a good relationship. And everything was just kind of going through the motions. And I had this feeling of like, well, this is just what life is about. And, like, it is what it is. But when I had a moment and it felt like something just clicked in my brain, and I couldn't tell you when that happened, but there was just this feeling of like, I was looking at my life. I think I was like journaling one night, and I was flipping through my journal, and I realized that all of my entries were just like so sad. And I just had this thought of like, is this really it? And then as I was kind of like sitting there with all of that, I was like, no, like, I deserve to have a good life. And it was just such a novel thought. But then when I like really chewed on that, and it's not the idea, like when I say like I deserve to have a good life, I don't mean it in like the pretentious way of like, I deserve to be a billionaire and have a private jet and have servants. And like, it's not that at all, but it's just the idea of like, no, like, I deserve to have good friends, and I deserve to like feel happy when I wake up, and I deserve to feel like I matter, not because I've done anything, just from the fact that I'm alive and I'm breathing. Like, everyone has inherent value, and I do as well. And that's something that I've told like my friends, like, it's so easy to tell like a friend that's hurting or a community member that's hurting, that like, hey, like you have value and you have this. And I kind of was really thinking about it. It's like, how come I can tell that so easily to other people, but I can't tell that to myself? And if it is true for other people, then it has to be true for me. And it's that thought that spurred me moving up here. And it spurred me quitting that startup. And it spurred me starting my own company and choosing the friends that I'm choosing and like being really intentional about like who I'm dating and being like even with like the type of clients that I work with. So I hope that answers the question. Probably a little bit unconventional of an answer, but like that's the thing that really, when I think about what changed the trajectory of my life, it was that moment of actually being like, no, like there is goodness. And if I'm telling my friends that they deserve good things just by existing, then that truth also has to apply to me. So
Yeah, I don't think it's unconventional. I think it's great that you recognize that. I think it's great advice. Kayla, thank you so much. You just, at 29, you've accomplished quite a bit and you're going to continue to do great things. But I'm super happy for you. This was a great conversation. So thank you.
Thanks for having me on, Monica. And congratulations on launching your podcast and doing everything with Keystone Network. I'm really excited to see where it goes.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to Path Found. If anything we talked about today connected with you or gave you a new perspective, we'd love it if you subscribed, left a review, or shared the episode with someone you care about. You can also find us on Instagram at Path Found Podcast. To explore more stories, resources, and ways to get involved, visit KeystoneNetwork.org. This podcast is just one part of the journey. At Keystone Network, we're helping young people and anyone figuring it out as they go build meaningful futures one step at a time. A huge thank you to my podcast editor, David Strutt. You can find him on LinkedIn for helping bring these stories to life, and to Elizabeth Miner at Silvermine Creative for the beautiful artwork and web design. And if you're on your own path, navigating the unknown, making a pivot, or simply figuring it out as you go, just know you're not alone. The route may not be linear, but there's always a way forward. I'm Monica Argandonia, and I'll see you next time on Path Found.